Okay.
Hi, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Hopefully good. I've drove in today with rain, so hopefully it'll clear up just a little bit, but we're having a little rain, so it's a gloomy morning, but hopefully this will be an exciting event for you guys. So my name is Anna Radziwillowicz. I work for the University of Connecticut in our Operations Information Department. I also teach in the MS BAPM program heavily, and so one of the classes that I teach is databases, and so my topic will be kind of related to that. I do come from the industry. I have a little over 10 years experience in industry, and now I'm about 13 years into academia. So I kind of try to marry and bring the both worlds in together. So today's session will be about garbage in and genius out, and really why database design determines AI success. And I know that sounds kind of simple, but really databases really drives, or your data really drives every major business decision today. So everybody talks about AI like it's magic, but really the reality is that AI, right, and all of the decisions that we make on the business side is only as good as really what's underneath it, which is our foundation, our databases, and how data is stored. So today, by the end of this session, I hope that you will walk away with really four things. First, I hope you understand how database design directly shapes AI performance. I also hope that you recognize how poor structure and missing relationships quietly destroy insights that you could be gathering from your data. Third, I hope you see that data organization is a business skill that you should hone in and need to have, and it's not just a technical one. And then lastly, I hope you understand why companies fail with AI sometimes if they don't have good structured foundation and databases really from the get-go. They need some good foundation there to make good insights. So here's the core idea. AI is not intelligent in the way that we think. I think it's an amplifier. And so if our data is strong, AI becomes very powerful. And if our data is weak, obviously AI becomes dangerous. So AI doesn't fix any problems, but it helps scale them. And so think of this as the pipeline. Everything starts with your database design, right? That's your foundation. That's very the first icon here that you see. And then that helps shape your data quality, which is our filters. And then we could move in, and that feeds into our AI models. And then that helps to drive our business decisions. So it could be positive decisions, or it could have negative consequences if things aren't formulated well at the very foundation level. So if, again, something is wrong at the foundation, everything upstream is affected, from the decision-making perspective. So what's garbage in, and what does it actually look like? So it could be duplicated rows. So sometimes when companies store information about customers, it could be with different IDs. So for example, you might have John Smith or Jay Smith or Johnny Smith, things like that. And so you might have duplicate information there and inconsistent formats. You might have missing relationships where you're not linking customers to products or purchases that they have made, and therefore you're not able to make the right reporting and then link it to, say, revenue and see, where your revenue streams are coming from. This inconsistent formats is actually a good one to mention because if you think about how data is stored in Europe versus the US. So in the US, when we store dates, or when we write dates, right? Students are taught from the very beginning to put the month first, then the day, and then the year. But in Europe, it's the day of the month, and then the month, and then the year. So it's much different. So most companies work at a global level. And if you have a database with inconsistency, you might have the wrong information. So for example, some people might be inputting information in as, say, April 1st, but really what they want to put in is January 4th or something to that extent. So inconsistent formats is poor data. It's kind of garbage data. It needs to get cleaned up, and you have to have a good format or really definition for it, how it should be stored properly so that later you can make the right insights. You also could have unclear definitions. So revenue can mean different things per department, right? Or it doesn't have to be revenue. It could really be anything. And this isn't rare. This isn't something that it happens once in a blue moon. We have dirty and messy data all the time, especially as you're bringing platforms together, especially as you have legacy systems that are now being merged with new modern systems and things are coming together. It really creates a little sort of messy situation for companies, and they don't even realize it, how it could affect everything going upstream and their decision making. So all in all, if your data is duplicated and disconnected, your decisions will be as well. Okay, so let's connect this to business. Again, if you have data problems, it really comes down to money problems, right? You will have incorrect insights. So all of the analytics that you're running on that data might be flawed. It might be skewed and misleading. You might make some wrong conclusions, which really will lead to your poor decisions. And it's sort of like a distorted reality. You might be missing some opportunities. So something that could show you revenue stream in one area that could be a potential opportunity to scale in a particular market. You might be missing that because you didn't have the right data that was behind the scenes. And you could lose revenue because of it, and you might have wrong pricing. It might lead to wrong pricing. For example, companies that give discounts to, like if you're at the store and you have discounts, if you know something is selling to entice people, you might not be able to see whether something is selling at scale. And so you might miss that opportunity to either price it accordingly or give a discount or not give a discount, right? So you end up losing some revenue there. And then also you have reduced trust. So if teams and employees, again, see time over again that the foundation is crumbling and things are not the way that they should be, they stop believing the dashboards, and then their credibility is lost, right? And so again, it all really starts with a good foundation and a good database. Okay, so what is the solution? So the solution is really having a good database schema. And so you might be asking, well, what is a schema? I don't understand. So think of a schema as a blueprint, right? And I put on the screen here something that looks like a layout of your house, a living room, bedroom, kitchen, etc. So it's the blueprint of how data is flowing, right? It captures all the processes behind the scenes. And so the schema helps define how that data is stored in terms of all the attributes and characteristics that the company wants to capture information on. So things like a customer, orders, products, marketing campaigns, all of that information. It helps define how it's structured. Is it structured in tables? What kind of fields does it have? What kind of formats does it have? What's the metadata on all of that? And then how things are connected. So for example, you have customers that purchase products, and those products are part of an order. And so basically, how are those linkages together, which ultimately in the long run helps ensure that our data is consistent, right? So a schema will allow us consistency throughout all of those tables, all of those fields. It helps reduce redundancy. So we don't have any duplicates stored in data. Think back to Excel spreadsheets. I'm sure a lot of you guys use Excel spreadsheets still today. And if you worked in the workforce and maybe you haven't, maybe you have shared an Excel spreadsheet with somebody else. If you had your Excel spreadsheet and then you shared it with somebody else and you made an update to your spreadsheet, but then you didn't notify your friend to make the update in his or her spreadsheet, you might have inconsistency there. And so a database would help solve that. You have one source of truth, one location where you're making all of the updates and everybody can pull from the spreadsheet. So I guess the best analogy I could give you with spreadsheet is that you have your Google OneDrive, right? Everybody coming into the Google OneDrive is able to see the updates instantaneously. And that's essentially sort of a database in a sense. And then, of course, all in all, that database will allow us and enable us to have meaningful analysis done going forward from all of that data. So we see what the joins are, what the relationships are. It provides some sort of meaning, and it's a meaningful structure that really helps, define that clarity around the data that we see. So again, here's another example here. You see if the data isn't connected, right? We don't see customers being connected to orders, for example. We don't see products being connected to a revenue stream, and then our actions aren't connected to our outcomes. So our insights are incomplete, and then AI can't connect our our poor database really doesn't provide the linkages, and so then therefore it really hurts our output, and so we have incorrect insights coming out of it. So let me walk you through sort of data organization and normalization of data. And don't think of normalization as a technical term, just think of it as organizing data, right? So here on top, you will see one sort of Excel spreadsheet, or what it looks like an Excel spreadsheet. We'll call it a table. And in our table, we have customer, order, quantity, total cost, email, product, and address. And obviously, we could put a lot more information in here, but because I'm trying to keep everything into one slide and something to a very minimal sort of example, we're just going to keep it light here. But we could have, for the customer's sake, added other attributes like the date of birth of the customer, the first instance we met the customer, was there a membership with the customer, what the phone number was there, things like that. And on the order side of things, we could have added the detailed products that were purchased for that particular order. And for the product itself, we could have added a description. We could have added a price for one particular item, maybe the vendor that it was coming from. All of that information could have come in here together. But the idea here is that we take this big table that has several rows in here, and we try to organize the data into its like themes. So on the bottom, you will see here, you have a table, and we could call this a customers table. So any attributes or characteristics that are relatable to the customer, we would put them and group them together. So you have one table, one source of truth where you're going to update information only in this one table. So up here, you see Johnny has made 2 purchases up on the top table. But then on the bottom table, we put John's information all in one area. And it's not Johnny, it's John, for example. The person who's intaking that information maybe recorded one order as John because it was a brand new admin, they didn't know the person, but maybe the owner recorded the purchase as Johnny because it was somebody who kept coming back and they know that this is a repeated customer and they call this person Johnny. And so rather than putting John, they put Johnny. So the idea here is that we're going to take this information of John and Johnny and basically put it together, put it in one row where if we need to update John's information, like his email changes or his address changes or something else changes, we only have to update it in one area, whereas in the upper table, we'd have to update it in 2 areas. Likewise here, so John had purchased chairs, and now even though it has chairs on both orders, we could have one table with information about chairs. So if chair changed to a different name, or if we needed to update the price, and granted, I'm not showing you the price here, but in our products table, we could have chair, we could have price and the description, and if the price needed to change, we could change it in one area, one location, rather than changing it across 2 or 3 or several rows, right? Usually a company doesn't just have 4 rows like you see here, it would have thousands or millions of rows. And so you wouldn't want to update this information several times over and over again. You'd like to update it once. And so this, in essence, is data organization and normalization, where you're splitting out the data information into its like themes and then providing the linkages. You might be asking what this little thing here is. So this basically it shows us that it's a relationship from one table to the other table. And without going too much into the details of what this is, these are cardinalities. It basically shows us that you have a record that's connected to several records in this table. So this is basically saying that a customer can purchase or has purchased many orders or has put in many orders, right? Likewise here, this basically tells us that an order contains many products and a product is contained in many orders, but not all of them. So this would be sort of the beginning of designing a good, strong database where things are organized into its like themes in simple terms, and there's relations between these tables, this information here. Do we have any questions, by the way? Okay. So when we talk about, again, when we talk about this normalization, I do want you to just make sure that you understand it's not necessarily a technical rule. It's just helping to organize our data that, helps reduce the chaos. So when we do have good data, it reduces that duplication. So instead of having that same customer, like you saw, having 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways of that it was written, we have one source of truth, and it helps improve our accuracy. So again, we update it in one place. We have a lot of consistency, or data that is consistent throughout the tables. And then third, we straighten our relationships. So ultimately, this leads to better decisions because of our data being clean, it is consistent, and of course, it is trustworthy. And so now with having good data, we could scale, we could make things bigger, we could have the database evolve, grow, and we could then again make faster decisions and have a strategy around this and not simply just make decisions. So AI depends on the structure, and this is where I think a lot of people start thinking that AI will do the work for us. But AI does assume that your data is correct. It does not question it. We question it as humans, but AI won't question it. It does not validate our structure. It's really how we prompt it, right? But AI learns the patterns, and even if those patterns are wrong, and if your data is flawed, then AI becomes essentially confidently wrong in the output. So I want you to think about this. And let's be honest, when we talk about companies, they don't really choose between good or bad. They really choose between having the right information and getting the information fast, right? So fast and right is really key. But if you had to choose, you have option A, where this kind of looks amazing. You have you're able to make an AI dashboard fairly quickly. You have insights in days, not in months, and the leadership can feel like they're moving fast, but you have a high risk of making wrong decisions. Or you have option B, and option B is you have delayed output. You do have an upfront investment because you're investing in creating the right data structures before you actually apply AI or any insights or dashboards that you build off of that later. But you do have reliable and trusted data that really does lead you to informed decisions. So if you're going to be making a multi-million-dollar marketing decision that's potentially based on any bad data that's in your organization, would you go the option A, fast AI, bad data route, or would you go option B, the slower insight but cleaner data route? And I would think that if you're sitting in the room and you're the CEO of your organization, you probably would want to go with option B, do things right, the right way from the very beginning, and not have to rework, because that, of course, tarnishes quality, but also you lose money because you have to redo some of the work. So do it right from the very beginning. So let me kind of paint a picture for you. Okay, so imagine you're running this company and you want to find and identify your top customers, the ones that would be driving most of the revenue within the business. And those are the customers you would want to reward. You would want to retain them. You might want to give them a special discount, and you might want to target them with a specific marketing. And as much as this seems simple, if your data is wrong, it is not going to give you the right information. So for example, if you had duplicate data and you had John Smith, as you see on the screen here, and J Smith and j.smith@email.com, the AI model might be thinking it's 3 different individuals, right? So now you're not looking at this person as a valuable customer, one that produces and brings in a lot of revenue to the company. AI might be looking at this customer as 3 different individuals, right? As 3 average people. And so you're missing the boat in potentially rewarding that person correctly, effectively, and giving them some sort of discounts or whatnot. Okay, so AI had no idea. So it really starts from the ground up. So here's the takeaway that I think, if you could remember something, remember this, that structure determines the truth. If your structure is weak, then your view of reality is distorted. And if your structure is strong, then your insights become reliable. So remember, the database doesn't just store data, it defines what that truth is. So we talked about how database shapes AI, but let's talk about how AI is starting to reshape how we design databases. So traditionally, databases were very structured. We had tables, rows, and clearly defined relationships. And everything really had to be planned upfront. But now things are changing. With AI, we're able to process text and images and messy, unstructured data. And AI can help us with that, right? It could help us detect patterns. It can help suggest the relationships. It could help clean data automatically, like taking those 3 different individuals, bringing them all together, changing the names. It could do it faster and quicker for us. But it does not replace really good data design. So you still need a good foundation. You still need to be able to make the right linkages, and you still need to have a human to sort of look at the logistics of it and make sense of it. So think of AI as like a powerful assistant. It's good. It could help us, but we still need good data structures to be able to make better and faster decisions to avoid any mistakes that we might be making in the future. Okay, so AI won't replace you, but it will expose whether you understand how things actually work. So foundation starts with right education, with having the right database. So let's bring it all together. Again, if our system is well designed, it makes you and us, the company, faster and sharper and more effective. But if we have a poor system, then we fail quietly. And then we could fail not just quietly, but we could fail at scale. And it could be harder to detect things. So remember, better structures leads to better insights, which ultimately leads to better decisions, which ultimately leads to better results. And remember that you could use AI to help structure that foundation much faster and much stronger. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you guys for listening. And does anybody have any questions?
Also, feel free to put your question on the chat box as well.
I don't think I see the chat box.
Oh.
Maybe Jaja, if you could read them out, if there's any questions there.
Yeah, so far we do not have any question as of yet. So With that being said, I'm going to stop the recording and perhaps we can take some questions related to the program if any of you have any. Okay.